Scramble the bombers, alert the subs, take me to DEFCON 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Eagles Live Breakdown Show, postgame, Eagles Cowboys. Eagles fall tonight, 33-13 to the Dallas Cowboys, and we're here for you. We're here to be real with you, all right? And I think that's what this is all boiled down to. No more excuses, no more blaming the ref. I heard somebody blame the schedule earlier. Listen, we're going to be real, and that's how I run things. And I'm Matty B, by the way, and welcome to the Edge of Philly Sports in our post-game coverage of the Eagles-Cowboys. Joining me tonight, Joe Wood, and then below me there, Joe Marks. Gentlemen, we're going to get right into this right now. Joe Marks, I'm going to send it down to you. Joe, the hype this week was, listen, we got punched in the face by the 49ers, but the season starts today. We're going to come off, and we're going to rise from the ashes like the Phoenix. What happened?
No mental preparation. This was a complete mental breakdown. It's not about the penalties. The refs called what they called because that's what they saw, and that's fine. But it's the players that drew the penalties, that created those fouls, that didn't react appropriately. Yeah, we got punched in the face by San Fran and expected to come down to Big D and take a big dump in Big D. And instead we're having to possibly flush this. And then come back and go back to the West Coast and go to Seattle next week. It doesn't get much. I mean, I get the Giants in the last 3 weeks, but that doesn't get any easier.
No, we get the extra day, too. It's a Monday night game. Thankfully, we got a little help from the NFL schedule makers there. But let's head over to Joe Wood. Joe, all season long, it's been the same recipe. They come out unprepared. They get kind of pushed around the first half. They've been able to battle back in second half. Well, that magic seems to be gone. Why is it a 10-2 or now 10-3 football team who has Super Bowl aspirations so mind-boggling unprepared week after week after week to play a football game?
Yeah, I think a lot of times the easy route is to say the coaching, the inexperience of the offensive defensive coordinator. A lot of times we have to chalk it up to that. But there's just mental lapse across the team. Can't get off the field on third down. Now, some of that probably is scheming and play calling. But at the same time, players have to make plays, and they're just not getting it done on third down. Hate to point fingers at one player, but Smith tonight had some key plays where he just didn't make the plays he normally makes. That play deep in the end zone off his fingertips. A regular game, Smith catches that ball, puts us down 27-20 going into the fourth. Huge plays like that just didn't seem to be going the Eagles' way this year. And like you said, there was magic early in the season where they were kind of pulling off the comebacks when we truly said they shouldn't have won that game. That magic wasn't there tonight. And it just seems like, this might be who the Eagles are. If they win out, they can control their own destiny. But realistically, if this team shows up in the playoffs, I'm not sure how we win multiple games in the playoffs. I mean, you might get by first round with maybe a bad wild card team if you win the East, but you're not getting far in the playoffs playing like this.
Joe Marks, I gotta use last names today, guys. Please forgive me and give me that wide berth there. Because I'm a flush with Joe's here. But anyway, Joe Marks, I heard you earlier in the week, and there's been a lot of talk about some of the skill position players on this team. Specifically the linebackers. I don't know, maybe I missed it, but Shaq Leonard didn't do a hoot in hell tonight to address any of the other linebacker problems. That big old boy from the Dallas Cowboys, Mr. Ferguson, once again exploited the middle of the field, maybe to a lesser extent than what happened last week. But talent level, Joe, I want to ask you this. Are the Eagles just not that good? Is it simply put there?
In the beginning of this season, I said to Frank Finnegan on my show that the biggest concern I'm going to have about this team going forward this season is the defense. Not just because of the coordinator and everything out. It was the youth, the inexperience, and the lack of skill at some of the more skillful positions. Linebacker, I have been waving the flag for linebacker for probably the betterment of 5, 6 years. And they just don't invest in it. And this is proof why that's a mistake. I look at like the good defenses that won Super Bowls, Ravens, Steelers, Niners back in the day, the Giants. They all had good linebackers. That's not an accident. Even the Patriots, with despite having, probably one of the best quarterbacks of all time, they also had really good linebackers. And Matt, I said what I said, and I stand by it, and that I don't always waver, and you're just not good enough. Darius Slay's beyond his prime. He's not big play Slay anymore. I'm sorry, he's not. He's the poor man's Asante Samuel when Asante Samuel came here. Bradbury is just not good enough anymore. And when we're all looking back and saying we're missing Avonte Maddox, and that's the guy we're missing, yeah, it's not good on the defense. It's not good enough. Let me put it that way.
And Joe, just for the record, just so that I know that we're on the right page here, who do you blame for that in terms of assembling not good enough talent? What person or entity or department of the football team do you blame for that? Because I want to hear it loud and clear, right? I just want to make sure I'm recording, right? Yeah, I got it. Let's do it.
Well, I mean, I know what you want me to say, but here's the other thing, Matt. Don't misconstrue one take for another take. I said that they're young and inexperienced. I didn't say that they were untalented.
Okay.
They're talented. They're just not. They're too.
They're just not talented.
No, they're too green around the gills. They're too young. Jalen Carter, he made a great play tonight. So you can't say he's, not talented. Jordan Davis early on in the game made a good play. Nolan Smith, who I haven't heard his name as often as I'd like to, made a good play tonight. These guys are all capable of making good plays. And the guy who drafted those guys,
you can say his name.
Howie
okay.
Roseman.
Oh, there you go. There you go. You can do it. See?
Now, but Nolan Smith, looking back now, feels like a fetish pick.
Say that again?
I said Nolan Smith now almost feels like a fetish pick with the Dogs when you look at who was still there with Branch and stuff like that, who would have actually helped this team immediately and not maybe he's a year away from being a year away.
I'd go one step further. Not really. I wouldn't really say he was the fetish pick for the Dogs, but Kelly Ringo was. Because Kelly Ringo's been MIA
Except today.
Well,
with two pass interference calls on one play. Except today when he got two flags on one play.
It was a pass interference and a face mask, right? That was the call. Yeah.
I mean, that's not what you want to. If that's the first time I'm hearing his name, and I mean, I didn't know his number was 22. But that if that's the first time I'm hearing his name, that's not a good impression to me. That seems more of a fetish pick than the Nolan Smith. But here's the thing you got to keep in mind, Matt and Joe. The linebackers that, yes, Howie Roseman signed, but there's no money to do anything big with. There's a salary cap in the NFL.
But Howie's the genius. Howie's the magic man. Yeah. Howie's the make it all happen. What happened to that, Joe Marks? Now you're making excuses for that fraud of a GM. Now, listen, we got to keep it real, man. We got to keep it real.
No. I'm not making excuses.
It sounds like it to me.
No,
yeah, Joe, can I jump in real fast? Can I jump in real fast with this? I think this has less to do with the contracts and the salary cap because, again, Howie seems to make it work in other areas. I think it had more with Howie just not valuing those positions. I don't.
So too.
We had TJ Edwards here who wasn't great, but he's better than what we had.
Having
And
an
we let
all-pro
him
season
walk.
for the Bears this year, by the way. TJ Edwards, he's having an all-pro season this year.
Yeah, and he didn't get a contract that would have broke the bank for this team. You could have easily got him and let other pieces walk, but I just think he devalue safety and linebacker. Unfortunately, we've seen Gardner walk for pennies on the dollar. We let Edwards walk, we let White walk, and unfortunately, it's backfiring now later in the season when teams are kind of exposing us at this point. Across the middle and deep.
You're only telling half the story. See, Kaiser White and who's the other? Not Edwards. Who's the other person you mentioned?
Gardner Johnson.
Oh, CJGJ. Both Kaiser White and Gardner Johnson left of their own accord, not because the money wasn't there. The money was there.
We don't know that. Yeah,
that's what's
said.
No, the money was there.
But Johnson seems to believe that that's.
Listen, guys, we got to get back on task. I got like 50 messages in here we got to get to, and we got to break this game down. But your points are very valid. My point is valid. I think we're all valid points. But the problem is the here and the now. Right now, this team has got smacked in the mouth not once, but twice in back-to-back weeks by teams that they're going to see again in the playoffs. And for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations, that's just not cutting it. Now, is it talent on the field? It is. Is it coaching? It is. Is it leadership? It is. Is it lack of championship DNA? It is. It's all those things. But let's break some of this stuff down. Let's head now over to the game a little bit.
Matt, I am not joining you on that mountain. I know that's what you were trying to bait me into saying. And
unfortunately, Joe, you're not welcome on that mountain with me anymore.
Glad.
None of you are. None of you are welcome.
I'm glad. I hope there's a mudslide.
So one of the big problems tonight for the Eagles, boys, 3 turnovers, three critical turnovers, and it seemed like in all critical situations of this game, drive killers. They were driving on every single one of these turnovers. The Eagles have now turned over the ball 19 times this season, an ungodly number compared to what they were last year. I'm going to send that over to you, Joe Wood. Why is this team turning the football over? I mean, it was all fumbles tonight. No interceptions. Jalen Hurts has had a case of the fumbles all season. He coughs the ball up. It was, punch outs. I mean, they were swiping at the balls and the balls were coming out. The last one on Devontae Smith, he covered up, but they got it out anyway. Why is this team fumbling so bad this year?
Why the team is fumbling, I mean, it's inexcusable. I can't say why they are because, look at the team last year. It wasn't as big of an issue. But if you look at Jalen this year, I believe he has 10 picks, 5 fumbles so far this season, which I think he is, if not leading the league, second in the league in both of those stats, which is astronomical for the guys in a leisure team. I look a little bit of it as almost putting too much of a workload on Jalen, that we know his knee is hurt and stuff like that. And I'm not going to go on the car route and say, let's sit him because Mariota is a better option, because that's totally not the answer. But the running game is working with Swift a lot there. And I felt like in the first half, kind of just abandoned it. We didn't see much of Swift. I'm curious if Swift, is not liked in the clubhouse or something, because there's times in the season where it just seems like we're going away from Swift and not giving him the ball. But just looking at the numbers overall, Matt, like you said, I mean, 324 total yards to 394 doesn't scream a 33-13 loss. It doesn't scream the Eagles got outplayed, But I look at, like you said, the third downs, getting off the field. Eagles just can't seem to get off the field. And like you said, the turnovers are the biggest thing, which last year we were first in the league, I believe, in turnover differences. This year is the complete opposite, which is, I think, wherein lies we see the biggest difference in this team. We were constantly getting the ball in positive field situations, and this year we're giving that back to the other team, which lies in these close eke it out games.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And as for an offensive attack for this team tonight, when the most exciting play was the fake punt. There's also some other issues, but let's look at some of the numbers. Jalen Hurts, 18 for 27 on the night. 197 yards, averaged about 3.5 yards or 7.5 yards to throw. He was sacked once for 7 yards. And Braden Mann, 1 for 1 with 28-yard pass. He averages 28 yards.
Punter a game ball, please.
Yep, that's what I'm talking about. On the rushing side, DeAndre Smith, 11 carries for 39 yards. Jalen Hurts, 5 carries for 30 yards. And then the rest of them, Gainwell and Scott, 7 apiece. Dak Prescott, 24 for 39, 271 yards, 6.9 a pass, 2 touchdowns. Tony Pollard was the leading rusher, 16 carries, 59 yards. Jake Ferguson was the leading receiver for the Cowboys tonight, 5 receptions for 72 yards, mostly down the middle of the field. CeeDee Lamb, they kept him in check. He only got 71 yards tonight versus the 191 he got in the first time the Eagles played him. But all in all, those are your numbers. Joe Marks, I want to ask you one more question, and we got to get into these comments. I'm getting buried alive. I got to go down to this offensive attack, Joe. You know, I didn't see any changes from the week before that, week before that, week before that, week before that. This team still uses no motion. This team still uses no deception. Why?
Well, they used motion early, and then they got away from it. And they mentioned it on the telecast. And the interesting thing to me is they also mentioned, as they used it as rarely as they did tonight, that they're not a motion team. And why, I don't know, considering that seems to be a good strategy, considering some of the top teams do it to kind of identify or possibly identify some of the things that the defensive coordinator of the opposing team is trying to disguise. Now, you know, the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys, he's good at disguising his blitzes and his packages despite the motion. He's been known that he's been good at doing that. But I'm still puzzled with that myself. More to the point, and to kind of get into what Joe had said about, you know, Swift and why they went away from that. He wasn't world beating. He was doing 5-4-2. He got a couple losses. And I think for them, they just weren't seeing enough of the movement up front. So I got to ask, you know, in addition to the motion, is this offensive line not putting up the kind of protection in the run game or in the, you know, I guess RPO game as they have in the past? Because a lot of what those schemes pull up when not running motion and everything, basically that is all stemmed from the offensive line and the holes they create.
Joe, I'll let you handle that. What you think?
Well, I mean, I definitely think the no motion is a huge thing, but looking at these comments that are coming in as of late, it really drives it home. You have no screen passes. It seems like everything is.
Don't steal the thunder, Joe. I got to get to them, man. Don't reveal our secrets.
But there's nothing dump offs, easy plays for Jalen. It doesn't seem like that's built into this offense this year. It just seems like every option Jalen has is 5+ yards downfield, where every play doesn't need to be 20+ yards. Joe, you said 5-4-2, 5 and 4 yards on a run is great yardage, you know, because you think you get 3 downs, 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, that's 15 right there. I just think we got to stop worrying about the home runs here and allowing this offense to progress downfield. And I don't see that enough this year with the little plays. It just seems like we have a 3rd and 2 and we're throwing the ball deep. Like, it just doesn't, there's no continuity with the play calling for me.
I think that's hitting it on the head. Daniel Berry checks in with Yo. He also says Eagles game or Eagles lame, LOL. Rich, I'm really hoping we don't finish 10-7. Nothing changes with this team. And of course, with the ramifications of this loss, the Eagles are now currently in 5th place in the Eastern Conference, and they are tied with Dallas Cowboys for first place atop the NFC East, but they hold their own fate in some weird, wonky tiebreaker scenario against common opponents. If the Eagles win out, they win the NFC and they win the NFC East. So right now, that's the scenario again. So all is not lost, Eagles Nation. Hang in there. And then she also says, I really hope that team don't finish 10-7. I don't know. I don't think that's possible. I really don't. That would be epic. That would be an epic disaster if this team loses out to finish the season. I don't see it happen. Joe, what do you think, Joe Marks? Do you think the Eagles have a possibility with the schedule? And again, no game is easy. But is it possible the Eagles finish out, on the losing side?
Is it possible? Yes. Will it happen? No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Got the Giants twice and the Cardinals. I don't see that.
Well, you got to get through Seattle too. I don't see Seattle's not going to be a cakewalk because we got to go out
Yeah,
there and all that.
that's one that I'm concerned about. Coming back home and then going back to the West Coast. That's not easy.
Well, no, I'm not downgrading Seattle. I'm just saying 10-7. You have to lose to the Giants twice and the Cardinals, which
man, that would be that'd be bad. And then going into the playoffs as a 5th or 6th seed, that would be a nightmare. Nazir says, I want to fight the person that made that sign. Hey, I know the sign he's talking about was flashed up at the end of the game. I didn't see it. I heard it. What was it? Joe Wood, can you tell me what that sign was? It was a picture of Nick Sirianni's face.
Yeah,
what was
Cry Eagles. It said Cry Eagles Cry, and it was the Super Bowl when he was crying during the national anthem.
Oh, wow. Man, Hey, you give it, you got to get it, man. That's how I say. We should be 6-6. We got lucky against the Bills, Patriots.
See, I don't agree with this comment. It's not luck in the NFL. It's hard to win a game in the NFL. We've seen teams go 0-4 in the win column. It's not luck. Teams battle it out and win. I don't agree with the luck.
Listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they were lucky. Yeah, I am. I am going to say that. They were lucky. They were lucky, but not in the games that this person mentions. They were lucky in the Bills game. They were lucky in the Chiefs game. I'm not.
But guys, let's face it. There's a luck a part of every sport.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's a little bit of luck included with everything.
And sometimes it's on your side, and sometimes it's not.
Yeah. Right.
Luffy says he loves his team, but we are dog shit. And Mike Lauro, listen, I got to pause here, boys, because Mike Lauro, who, I respect a great deal. I do. I like Mike. I've worked with him many times. I heckled him this morning on his show, and I got a lot of feedback from him. So I'm going to tell you what, Mike, how do you like me now? All right, Mike, how do you like me friggin' now? I called the Eagles to win this game, but I went on a tirade about why I don't feel this team is a Super Bowl contender, because that's what we're wanting here, right? It's not about winning the division. It's not about the number 1 seed in the playoffs. It's about going to the Super Bowl. And we went back and forth. And obviously I'm not coming off my hill, and he's not going to come off of his, and I don't take pleasure in this. I really don't. I wanted the Eagles to win this game. But I'm not crazy, Mike. All right. I can see. I take the green sunglasses off from time to time. Matter of fact, I haven't put them on in years. So maybe I need to put my green sunglasses back on. Maybe life will be better for me. I don't know. But it's good to see you, Mike. Thanks for checking in. We'll be talking later, man. I promise you that. Coaches are clueless. Surprisingly,
I gotta go talk to him on Thursday, Matt.
Well, that's fine. Tell him I said hey.
Oh yeah.
don't poke the bear. You don't want me to do that? Yeah. He's a mountain of a man. Joe Marks, coaches are clueless. Surprisingly, special teams coordinator, our best coach. Yeah, I mean, that was the play of the night, the fake punt. I want your take on Nick. We've talked Brian Johnson and Sean Desai, and I'm sure I know there's comments a little further down that we're going to address it more specifically. But why is Nick Sirianni not getting as much criticism as his coordinators are getting? It's his team. Ultimately, he's the head coach. When is Nick Sirianni going to start tasting some of this mess?
Because he's already said he's giving his coordinators the reins. I mean, he did that last year. So now he's kept to that, and now he's kind of putting the axe over both of these new coordinators' necks. And I said this on Thursday. I said, the defense against the Niners just, to me, was just, it was despicable. Like, you could have thrown a high school coach out there to coach defense better than Sean Desai did. And look, we both graduated from the same college, so we're both alumni. So I'm not saying anything I won't say to his face at the alumni gala. Believe me when I tell you, Sean, there's got to be better schemes than this. When I'm sitting here missing Jonathan Gannon, which makes me sick to my stomach, you got to do better, brother. You got to represent the cherry and the white a little bit better than this.
Joe Wood, I want to send it right back to you with the same question. Why is Nick Sirianni not facing heat on the performance of his team and his coaches?
Yeah, I mean, and I definitely get what Joe's saying with Nick kind of ditched that off onto his coordinators. But at some point, we have to stop and say, well, then why don't you take it back? Clearly it's not working. Why don't you start taking it back? And I think starting this week, we will start hearing it. A lot of the media was constantly the Knicks shenanigans on the sideline with the fans and the media and the way he portrays himself. That was a lot of the talk in the Philly radio, was how he acts on the sideline. I think that's going to switch now to how he's not taking the play calling back over. And I definitely agree with you, Joe, with on the coordinator side with the play calling. Like, we couldn't find a way to get Leonard involved more. I understand it's only been a week. He's here a week. But let's get that package that he knows best, and let's get him on the field as much as possible. Clearly, Morrow getting shredded for 150-plus yards last week is not working. We need to find a way to get him on the field as much as possible and Morrow off the field. So that was a little confusing to me tonight, was not running the package that Leonard might be the most comfortable with and getting him on the field as much as possible.
Andre says they won't win out. Angry Anthony says just embarrassing. I think there's are we embarrassed out? Or are we like what happened last week against the 49ers? Is that just taking the like that, like, oh yeah, I mean, that shock? Is this still I guess a better way to phrase this, and I'll start with Joe Marks. Does this loss sting as badly as last week's does, or is it less?
No, it's worse. It's
Really?
worse because it's the Cowboys. It's worse because it's the Cowboys.
Yeah. Joe Wood?
See, it's weird to say this. Maybe the score stings a little bit, but the loss doesn't sting as much to me, because you kind of go into this seasoning expecting to split with the Cowboys. You know, you expect win one at home, lose the road. So I kind of, when I was marking off the beginning of the season, wins, losses, marking this also as a loss, just because you always expect to split with your division.
You know, and the funniest thing with me, and it's not lost on me, you know, we're 10-3. We're not 3-10, and yet all of this venom is out there. And is it a product of the fact that even though they were winning all these games, and I'm going to throw this out to anybody who wants to take it, but as we were winning all those games, was there something in the back of everyone's mind by saying, this don't feel right, this feels a little bit too uneasy, they're not out there asserting their will upon opponents? I'm not going to necessarily say they're not blowing people out, but they're just not playing really good football completely. And is that why we have now sit here at 2 straight losses at 10-3, and we're sounding all kinds of alarms? Anybody want to take that? Go ahead.
So I'll take it first. I think a lot of what we go back to is last season. You know, it doesn't look like last season. Last season was a lightning in a bottle, I feel, where everything was clicking for us. And I think we needed to stop referring back to last season. Looking at this season overall, we were fourth in total points behind the Cowboys, the Dolphins, and there was one other team I can't name off the top of my head, but fourth in points scored by an offense. It's been close games. It hasn't been blowouts like last year, but we won 10 games still at this point of the season. It's not easy to win in the NFL. Whether it's beautiful or not, this isn't college football. You don't need style points. As long as there is win in the win column, to me, that's all that matters.
Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what Joe Wood said, is that last year was lightning in a bottle, that's for sure. No one expected to get that far, but we took it. Coming into this year, I think we knew we were going to lose some pieces. That was an inevitability. But I think we also kind of thought, okay, this offense is just a juggernaut. It's just going to carry us the whole way through. And when the offense isn't putting up 45 points a game, regardless of what the opponent's putting up, it just kind of feels like we're not progressing where we thought we would. Like, we put our money on our offense, and we may still put our money on our offense because, you know, fact of the matter is Devontae Smith, you know, we're going to have to figure out how to pay him, and that may be a real big challenge. DeAndre Swift is only on a 1-year contract. So understand something, the momentum that you have here, there's a part of it, at least offensively, that you have to start to gather that lightning in the bottle. And, you know, here's my real expectation for this team has always been around the 14 win mark. So if they win out, they'll hit the mark that I predicted in the beginning of the year.
But you know what? You know who wins out every time when they hit this mark? And that is people who are looking for some workman compensation, motor vehicle accident, personal injury, or criminal law help, or conversations and questions and all that. Call Dave Cherry over at 610-565-0300. Tell him EOP, Matty B, the Eagles, and Nick Sirianni sent you, and they'll take great care of you. Okay. Back to the mix. I have 75 unread messages here that I got to go through, so please bear with me. Rich said Brown drop catches and fumbles, Smith drop catches and fumbles, and Hurts fumbled. Yeah, A.J. Brown, was it more of a product of the scheme Dallas was running tonight, or we haven't really been talking about the magic of A.J. Brown now? It seems like for a little while before earlier this season, it was, he was on his way to the MVP. Now it's been kind of leveled off, and it's actually kind of dipping. I know teams have taken notice to him, and I know they're doing what they got to do to defend him. But I was told earlier in the year it didn't matter because he was just still making plays and making catches. But now that seems to be gone away. He's making plays, making catches, but they're way, way, way short of the goal line and way, way not really affecting much of anything. Joe Marks, what do you make of A.J. Brown, if anything?
I think it's a little overblown. I think you have to look at the level of competition that he's played against in the last couple weeks when he's struggled. Tonight, he faced a guy who's a Super Bowl champion in Stephon Gilmore, and before it was Ward on the Niners, and then the week before that it was I forget exactly, with the Bills. But this is the thing that what I think when I think of A.J. Brown. He's a big play guy. And Joe Wood brought up a great point, and it's not lost on me, and I don't disagree with Joe Wood at all in the sense that they look for the home run. And, not to put a Phillies reference into this, but when you're just looking for the long ball, and you can't always hit it out of the ballpark every night, you're not always going to win the games. And so when A.J. Brown goes against a guy who can actually contain him, that home run is gone. Now you need to figure out how to play small ball. And the Eagles, similar to the Phillies, don't know how to do that.
Yeah, I've noticed that too, and it's not lost to me either, Joe. It's a very good comparison. They are swinging for the fences.
To be fair, they did have a home run tonight with A.J. Brown that he just dropped on the backside.
It was horrible.
Early in the game. They were Collinsworth were trying to swing it that it was a hard catch to make, but it was right there in his basket. It should have been caught.
And Angry Anthony checking back in. Joe, do you watch the GCW last night? What is the GCW, Joe? Is it Joe Woods on? I imagine he's on.
Yes. So it's a wrestling show, but I fell asleep. It came on 11 o'clock last night. It was like a 3-hour event, so I did not stay up for that.
Good Lord. Steven checking in. Matty GM, safe to purse. Listen, I promised everybody here last week when I did this show that I had a PowerPoint presentation on how I looked at the Eagles going forward after they got rid of Howie Roseman. And I will unveil that at its right moment in time. That's not right now. So stay tuned for that. That'll be a special here on the Edge of Philly Sports, I promise. It'll be a masterclass, trust me. And then Luffy says, let Howie run the whole team.
It's going to be a master of something, but I'm not sure if it's a master class.
It's going to be a master class. I don't know what he means, let Howie run the whole team. I would shudder to think what he would do as a head coach. Hashtag DC4L. I don't know what that means either. And then Howie has done everything he can. Coaches ain't stepping up. I disagree. I disagree.
There was a report that came out this week that was saying that Howie was making the coordinators meet with the analytics team, and the analytics team was actually putting the game plan in place for the coordinators.
No.
Does that mean that Nick's going to have a binder on the sideline?
Yeah. No. I don't want to see that, man. That better not be happening, because it's going to take my Howie hate to like a whole nother Nirvana land. I mean, whoa, man. I disagree with that comment, Luffy. whatever it's 420. I disagree with that comment. Howie has not done everything he can. Howie was wrong in his offseason plan. He let 15 out of 18 free agents walk away. Majority of them are on defense. We could have kept them. His plan was to sign low-level type C free agents, linebackers variety, and then hopefully that draft pick of Nakobe Dean, who is a bust. Let's say it out loud. Nakobe Dean's a bust. Nolan Smith and the other linebackers that he drafted were going to miraculously step up, and they have not. So Howie has not done everything he can, in my opinion.
But Matt, you're going to owe me a beer for Thursday because you're trashing the Bulldogs. You're going after Mike Lauro. These are my partners on Thursday. You're gonna need to buy me some beer for Thursday.
I'm just calling it as I sees it. Nakobe Dean on the field was ineffective when he was on the field, and now he can't stay on the field. So that's another knock too. So,
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah,
but Dean was a third or fourth round. Dean was a third or fourth round pick, so that's Howie's mistake for expecting a guy who all the experts were saying is a first round pick, and every GM in football was allowing him to slip.
But Joe, don't you remember on draft night when it happened? Howie was hailed as a magician, as a master of manipulating the NFL draft. That every GM passed up on this guy for 3 rounds, and then he was there for the Eagles. That's my point, Joe Wood. It's not the fact that I don't doubt that Howie has sense. He does, but he has brainwashed this fan base. He has somehow put a spell upon people to think that he's more than what he is. He's not a good GM. He's an average GM. I have a chart that tracks all his draft picks and where they are now and what they've done for the Eagles. I'm not bringing that out either. But the bottom line is, and he's hit on a few of them. I'll give him that. Jalen Carter's a hit. Jordan Davis is a hit. Devontae Smith is a hit. And Jalen Hurts is a hit. But there's been a lot of misses too, and a lot of misses that we were relying on to be big parts of the team. So, and that stuff just builds up over time.
To play devil advocate, Matt, though, Devontae Smith wouldn't have need to have been a hit had we hit the year before with Justin Jefferson.
Yes, absolutely.
Micah Parsons might have been the hit at that point in time. There's a counterpoint to every hit we have, you know.
I'm not. I mean, I agree with you.
No, I mean, I like Howie for what he can do with the checkbook, but when it comes to personnel, it's still kind of all up in the air with Howie when it comes to the personnel.
That's what I'm talking about, Joe Wood. Come on up the hill, man. You're loud up there, brother. I don't know anything about your allegiance to Howie, so you're welcome up on my hill anytime you want to come, man. Marketing strategy says you cannot hold on the ball too long. Put together the offensive game plan, can't tackle, can't cover anyone, can't get anyone off the field on third down, can't stick to any run game. That makes sense. And Joe Marks, that pretty much sums up the Eagles over the last 2 weeks at least.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of can'ts and a lot of can't not do's.
Yeah, I agree. Steven back in with the OL and the DB age starting to show, coordinators lack of age starting to show. I'm going to push back a little bit on the O-line, even though I agree they're not playing up to the Statland U standard of old. That's still a pretty damn good offensive line, and I'll take them over any. They are, in my opinion, still the best in the league. The DBs, that is a critical area that has definitely come back and bit us on the butt this year. Slay is beyond his prime, and he fell off fast. Bradbury must have had magic in the bottom with the rest of in the bottom with like the rest of the team last year, because he is back to his giant ways. We'll go to Joe Wood. How much of a liability right now are Slay and Bradbury back there?
Again, I hate to beat a dead horse with the poor decision making in the offseason, but I also wonder how much has to do with the linebackers and the safeties over top that are going to be helping them. You know, I wonder if Slay and Bradbury feel they have to sell out every play because they know they don't have that help in the middle of the field and over top to make up for mistakes, which is bound to happen. But getting back to the comment with the O-line, I mean, however much stock you put in Pro Football Focus, they looking at the like when they were doing the players' intros tonight, every one of the Eagles' offensive linemen outside of Juergens was top 5 in the PFF ranking. So I definitely don't think it's the O-line showing its age. I think it has more to do with just poor decision making in terms of what plays to call at what times. That doesn't help the flow of the offense.
Now, you guys mentioned this point earlier in the show, and I'm going to go down to Joe Marks on it. Screen passes and dump offs. Andy Reid lived with the screen pass. He lived with and then Chip Kelly, of course, with the RPOs. And now we're here where we don't do any of that anymore. And when the Eagles do run a bubble screen, it's one of the most disastrous looking plays that they run throughout the entire game. Joey Marks, with the offensive line so talented, why cannot the Eagles execute a screen pass?
Because you need more than just a good offensive line to execute a good screen pass. You need to have a very capable playmaker that's catching the ball to execute a good screen pass. That's why Deebo Samuels he's a great athlete, he's explosive. It's why Tyreek Hill, if he caught a bubble screen, he's explosive, he's fast. He's faster than pretty much anybody on that field at that time. So if you have guys like the offensive line the Eagles have, you have a window of time for that athlete to make a play happen. But if you don't have a playmaker who's capable of making that play happen, it's a moot point.
And I guess we're kind of looking at as the slot guy, the Quez Watkins / Julio Joneses of the world. They're not that adequate for that position. Well, what's wrong? Why can't we move Devontae Smith into the slot? Why can't we do that once in a while, or show some deception there?
We're not a running back screen.
Yeah.
Well, the other part of that, it putting Devontae in the slot is with those bubble screens. What's the one thing that tends to happen to the carrier if they make the wrong decision? Yeah. So do you want to blow up someone like a Devontae Smith or an AJ Brown or something like that? No. You want to. I mean, this is something that the Chiefs actually did, because you brought up Andy Reid. Andy still does it from time to time. And back when last year, I believe, the guy that they really leaned on, the Chiefs really leaned on to do the bubble screens or the screen passes, was their third receiver, who was really good, Miko Hardman. And, that's the difference. If you have a guy that has a tremendous amount of speed, athleticism, you can make a lot of things happen. There was a guy that was a free agent out there that I was kind of pitching the hope that the Eagles would go out and get, because it wouldn't cost them a lot of money, who's kind of that Miko Hardman guy, and that was Andy Isabella. And I was kind of surprised. But yeah, overall, the reason why the bubble screens don't work, you don't have a good enough playmaker to catch the bubble screen and make a play out of it. Because that's what a bubble screen or a screen really is getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands quickly into a playmaker's hands that can do more with it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And we've seen what the Eagles have tried to do, maybe with those lesser, I don't know, you can live without them type guys like Julio. And I know Julio was never a bubble screen kind of guy in his career, and the Eagles are trying to make him that now. But and then Quez Watkins, I don't even know why he's on this football team anymore, to be honest with you. So I agree with that. Steven says, I did want Brian Branch, NGL, but I thought Smith was a solid enough pick there. We're still talking about the draft. I'd rather watch Zach Gowen wrestle in WWE than watch the Eagles play today. At least Zach has heart.
Ooh, to be fair, if I'm not mistaken, Zach Gowen was a one-legged wrestler. So that tells you where he's thinking.
Marketing strategy 101, penalties, fumbles, missed tackles, no energy, bad coaching schemes, downward spiral going on and on. Listen, you're right. I mean, you're hitting all the points. It's the same thing every year. Can't cover anyone, can't get off the field on third downs, and can't successfully march down the field regularly. Joey Marks, or go ahead, Joey Woods. Yeah.
See, I don't agree with the can't move the ball downfield, because today they were moving the ball downfield. It's just every time they got into the red zone, they fumbled it. Even Devontae Smith was around like the 30 or 20 when he fumbled it later in the game. So the three key fumbles were all when we were marching and moving the ball downfield. So to say we can't move the ball is not an excuse. We just can't finish the drives when we move the ball.
No, moving the ball downfield has not been a problem.
And I want to respond to this is the same thing. It's just the same old thing. The Eagles aren't the same old. 10-3 is not same old Eagles. Okay? I've been an Eagles fan for a very long time. If you're in week 14 or 13, well, we're in week 14, we had the bye. If you have that kind of record at this point in the season, you're satisfied. You're satisfied. But right now, we have higher expectations. As you have mentioned several times, Matt, this is a Super Bowl aspirations type of team. Getting into the playoffs is no longer just satisfactory. It was satisfactory last year, and we caught lightning in the bottle because when we got in, we did a lot with it. But now we have to take the next steps. And the only next steps, despite us having skipped a couple steps last year, the next step is the championship. It's pulling down the Lombardi trophy. But, like to say it's the same old Eagles, that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Birch Kevin says the Eagles choke tonight. What happened to great leadership? That's a great question, Birch. We've been talking about that off and on. Good.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, we got Cox and Grams and stuff like that, but I feel like this team is missing that like Malcolm Jenkins type player where it's like the vocal leader who rallies this team up. Looking at this team, I don't know who that actually is.
Yeah, I agree. I know Jason Kelsey is kind of the pseudo that everybody looks at, but you're right. He's not that Malcolm Jenkins guy. And I made a point last week. I made a couple points. The Darius Slay comments during the week about fighting back with Seth Joyner. I would be furious if I was Nick Sirianni that he did that, because that's not a leader. That's absolutely not a leader of this team. And then the AJ Brown situation at the end of last week's game where he walked off the field when DeAndre Swift got totally laid out, really didn't even check on him, just walked right past him and headed towards the sidelines. To me, tells me he's not a leadership kind of guy either. So you're right, Joe. Who is that leader? Is it Jalen? Is it Jalen Hurts? Is he that leader? But who is that guy? That's a great question.
Yeah. No, to me, I just feel like every team needs that. And you talk about the AJ Brown last week with Swift. I feel like that's happened a lot this year, where in years past you had like a guy like Jason Peters, where if someone touched his quarterback, he was in you. This year, too many times we've seen late hits on Jalen, and we just kind of walk the other way and just turn our head. We don't have anyone on this team that is that physical presence out there that can really back our guys up. And I feel like that is something that's missing big time on this team.
You always have Dom, the security guard.
Well, he was allowed on the sidelines tonight, so he can't help us out from the tunnel. Again, I really wish they would have fired him. I hope they do fire him. Don't know you, Dom, and I don't have anything against you, but it's a bad look for the NFL what you did. You need to be fired, in my opinion. Steven says originally this was supposed to be a semi-throwaway-ish year. I disagree, Steven. I'm not saying that at all. Given the situation we saw coming. But you have to hope that you just had to hope the added parts gel. The added parts still can gel. Joey Marks, do you agree with Steven's sentiment that this was a semi-throwaway-ish year?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because you spent the money, you did the drafting to spend the money with Jalen Hurts with the contract that you gave him. You went out and got 2 first-round picks in Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. Then you sit there and you re-sign Bradbury and Slay to try and somewhat put a Band-Aid on a problem that you needed to fix. Because if they didn't get Bradbury and Slay, just imagine where their secondary would be without them. I'm not saying that they're like better for it, but they're not worse off. They could be a lot worse off without those two. So no, I don't think this was let's just, sleepwalk through the year. No. So you have to keep progressing forward.
No, I don't think you have that ability in the NFL level to have a throwaway year when you're at the pinnacle of a Super Bowl championship, and then tell your fan base, hey, you know what? Give me a year, let me retool, and then we'll come back in 2024 bigger. Now you can't do that. That's
this ain't the Cleveland Guardians.
Yeah, right. You can't do that. Marketing strategy 101, outcoached yet again. These coaches are outcoached by coaching the Eagles. Don't use computer analytics as running the Eagles. Yeah, and that's another thing that we didn't talk about tonight. Mike McCarthy. outcoached Nick Sirianni. I mean, Mike McCarthy couldn't coach his way out of a wet paper bag, but tonight he did a wonderful job of taking advantage of what the field gave to him. I mean, when they were kicking field goals galore because they didn't need to score touchdowns at a point. But yet we're going for it on 4th and 8 on our own 40-yard line with about, a quarter and a half left to go. Mike McCarthy outcoached Nick Sirianni tonight, gentlemen.
I knew he had an appendectomy, but I'm starting to believe more and more that it wasn't an appendectomy, it was a brain transplant.
Maybe it was. Maybe it was, because he definitely did not seem like the old Mike McCarthy tonight. No, not at all. Angry Anthony, the Eagles now dropped to the 5th seed. That is right. They are now the 5th seed in the NFC and tied for first place in the NFC East. Screen passes and dump offs were the only team that does. Yeah, we talked about that. Can't hold on to the ball, put together off of Jesus God, man. This guy's just listing them over and over again. Can't tackle. Yeah, we got it. No screen passes, no dump offs, horrible offensive schemes. Steven says
that man really wants screen passes and dump offs.
Yeah, he does, and he wants some coaches too. Despite every other issue in the game, we lost a possible 21 points on fumbles. Steven, you're 100% correct, but the point was we lost them. The refs didn't take them away. The roof didn't fall on them. We fumbled them away of our own fruition. So they are factored into this game. And we made a point earlier in the telecast talk about the turnovers. Joey Marks, I don't think I got your take on it. You can't have 3 turnovers in any game, let alone a game against a team that's chasing in the NFC East.
Yeah, absolutely not. Especially not 3 turnovers the way that they had them. Especially the Devontae and AJ Brown. They were going in for a score and trying to get back into the game. So that was just poor timed.
And then Steven hits up and saying the coordinators are just so green. It's showing more and more each week. Shouldn't they be turning a different color by this point, Steven? Don't you get better with age? I could get the whole green thing back in week 2 or 3, but we're in week 14. Shouldn't we be talking more of, listen, this is just who they are, and maybe they're not going to grow anymore or change any more colors. So the coordinators, again, will probably be a hot topic again this week.
Are we watching the same coordinators, Matt? Because there's reports that Brian Johnson is going to be one of the hottest candidates on the market for a head coaching vacancy.
Does that make sense to you? Because it doesn't make any sense to me.
I don't know what people are watching here.
Yeah, what kind of bland offense does a team want to run that they're going to make this guy the head coach? I mean, what about you, Joe Marks? I have seen those reports. What is your take on Brian Johnson maybe getting a head coaching gig?
I'm bamboozled by that comment. I really am. But there was something I heard tonight that made me not a Brian Johnson fan even more. So I like Jalen Hurts. I think he's a great quarterback. I think he's a great football player. I think he's a great athlete and a great leader. Brian Johnson's connection, we all know Brian Johnson's connection to Jalen Hurts. Brian Johnson had a connection to Dak Prescott as well. He coached him at Mississippi State. So I'm like, and then Dak basically had made comments that he wouldn't be the type of quarterback he is without Brian Johnson. And I'm thinking, please don't make my quarterback Dak Prescott 2.0. Please don't do that. Don't do that. So for Brian Johnson to get any kind of interviews, it better be for the Chargers job. That's all I gotta say. It better be for either the Panthers job or the Chargers job.
Whatever. Where's Julio? Where's Quez? And the offensive scheme? Okay, again, you just kind of named 2 players that are non-existent on this team. What's going to happen? We know what Quez Watkins is. Why is he even on the roster anymore? And Julio Jones is about 3 years past his prime. They're on the team and they're doing exactly what they're capable of, which is nothing. All right. So
yeah, you know what, Matt? You bring up something I brought up on Thursday. Maybe you can knock some sense into Mike Lower for me.
Sure.
Because I know I'm going to hear it this Thursday. They haven't given the ball to Rashad Penny yet.
Well, listen,
again, another guy that you can add to that Quez and Julio list.
Yeah.
Listen, just because you're on the team doesn't mean you can play. I mean, you got to earn the time. You got to make a reason why you should be given the ball. Rashad Penny hasn't done that. But you're right. I understand Mike's point, though. Then what's he doing here? It's almost like, as you mentioned earlier about the Phillies, the whole Taijuan Walker disappearing in the playoffs. Why is he a pitcher on this team if he's not going to be used in the biggest of moments? Same thing with Rashad Penny. We lack running back depth. We don't have that change of pace guy. DeAndre Swift's a good running back. I go forward with him next season, but he needs a compliment, and we don't have that for him. So if Rashad Penny ain't the guy, which is fine, I'm not a big Rashad Penny guy, but then bring somebody here who can do it and stop paying this guy for not doing anything. So that's where I stand on that.
Yeah, no, I agree, Matt. The fans keep calling for Penny, and clearly the coaches are not liking what they're seeing week to week in practice that they're at. Because if Penny could have helped the team, he clearly would have been on the field. So they're seeing something that they don't like that we're not seeing at practice. So clearly something is not working.
Right, and you can just because he's chalk it up as just a bad move, and there'll be plenty of time to dissect all the bad moves at the end of the season. But this was definitely one of them. If he's not going to get the ball, Steven says, yeah, they weren't doing anything to slow down the blitz, no question. Let's talk about the Dallas defensive pressure on the Birds tonight. It was not relentless. Jalen Hurts did, for the most part, once again, have a lot of time to make throws, but he once again held on to the ball sometimes a little bit too long. The blitz, they got to him one time for 7 yards. Joe Woods, what was your take on the defensive scheme that the Cowboys ran against the Eagles? They blitzed, but the Eagles did pretty good with it.
Yeah, no, it almost seemed like, and I hate to ever give Bosa any credit where he said we gave him the blueprint and go use it now, but they kind of did the very similar thing that the 49ers did last week, where they dared Jalen to beat you across the middle with your arm, and they showed pressure early and pulled back some, but they were daring Jalen to beat them. And a lot of times in those third downs, Jalen looked like skittish almost, where he was backing off, throwing off his back foot when he did still have some more time. Some of that, there was a couple plays where Kelsey might have not given the perfect snap to allow him to set and throw, but it definitely seemed like there was times where Jalen felt the pressure that wasn't actually there, and he was making quick throws that didn't need to be made.
Yeah, this guy just keeps on saying the same thing over and over again. Steven, I really want to believe newly added players can gel, but right now it's very hard to believe these green coaches have. Wow, man, am I on a loop here? Star Wars 99, welcome there, Star Wars. We have the players. I don't know, man. We got players, but are they the players? Frank Reich and Doug Peterson were a better game. Well, they were in 2017, but obviously not
now.
2017
If
anymore.
Brian Johnson goes, is Frank Reich an interview prospect for the OC?
I've thought of that since, of course, he became available. Do you think Frank Reich could take the role of mentor? He was Sirianni's mentor, right? So when they kind of flip roles, you could Reich work for Sirianni. I don't know. I don't know if pride runs that deep in the NFL. I don't know. I wouldn't be against it. Would you?
If Sirianni
wouldn't be against it, but it would be like Holmgren working for Andy Reid.
Exactly. Yeah. So could they exist in that dynamic?
Let's not call Frank Reich homegrown though.
No. I'm just giving another example.
But no, I get what you're saying. But I think if Sirianni won it right here, he would have been here already in some capacity. Whether
we talked about that last with the advisor position or whatever. Yeah. Just watch the tape and you'll see what. Listen, nobody is denying what you're saying, man. We agree. The problem is, does anybody have a reason or a solution to fix these problems? That's what I think we're all looking for here. But no one's denying what you're seeing. It's true. Steven says all you have to do is hold a running play 2 or fewer yards, and BJ gives up on the run. Yeah, he got away from that again. Listen, guys, my take overall from this thing tonight, the Eagles were asleep. The Cowboys didn't blow the doors off the Eagles. No, they just slowly and methodically pulled away, and the Eagles did nothing to come back. It was like the Eagles had no punch, no life. And I'm not buying this schedule bull crap. That's ridiculous. If you think that the Eagles, are they tired? Yeah, they probably are. And they're probably hurt too. But it's week 14. I get it. Some teams got hooked up and some teams didn't. But you're NFL players. You're getting paid millions of dollars to play a game. I'll go out there every week. You pay me $3 million a year. I'll go out there week after week after week and get my ass kicked and do it with a smile on my face if that's what you want. But don't give me that whole they're tired nonsense. But But yeah,
You're
they
selling
do.
yourself short there. $3 million is
No,
kind of
man,
low for the NFL standards.
no, man, that would be a bad day. But Joey Marks, what do you think about this notion that the Eagles give up on the running game too soon in games, and it seemed like they did it again tonight?
Well, I agree that they give up on the running game too soon. I feel like sometimes when it's not becoming explosive, like, Joe Wood said, 4 and 5 yards a game ain't bad. It's not. But when 4 or 5 yards, when you get a 5-yard game, then you give it back to him, and then he gets a 1 or 2 yard loss. Then all of a sudden you're at a 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, and now you have to throw. You're showing your hand. So in some ways, I feel like the Eagles are like, if there were more consistent holes and pockets for the runner to run through, if there were more 5-yard runs than an 8-yard run than a 3-yard run, rather than a positive than a negative, it would give this offense more confidence. And I think that's one of the reasons why they run with Jalen as much as they do, because Jalen is almost consistent with positive yards when running the ball. Now, I get it. It's not the popular notion to run with your quarterback, but this is a new NFL. And I get that people are just stuck in the past and they're like, but quarterbacks shouldn't do this. But that's the old NFL. That's the Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, stick your foot in the grass and throw from the pocket NFL. That NFL doesn't exist anymore. I'm sorry, but it doesn't.
Whatever NFL you want to go see, make sure you check out the good folks over at Sherry's Ticket Town, because they got you covered for great prices, no hidden fees for sports, concert, theater tickets. Go to www.sherrytickets.com. Family owned and operated since 1946. Save an additional 10% when you enter the promo code EOP10. All right, boys, I'm like halfway through them, so just bear with me here.
Can I just make one point to Joe Mark comment real fast about the running with Jalen?
It's your dime.
So, and I definitely get what you're saying, where you don't want to take Jalen's greatest weapon away, which is his legs. But at the same time, when you're paying these quarterbacks hundreds of millions of dollars a year, you want them to make it through the season. And the more runs you put on Jalen's body, the less likely that is that he is going to complete the season healthy. Yeah. So I think that's why teams overall want their quarterback to stand in the pocket and throw. Because, I mean, sure, you can still get hit in the pocket, but the odds are you're taking more of a beating when you're running that ball, and that's why you want your quarterback to kind of stand up in the pocket and make those throws.
It's interesting because there was research that I wrote an article a couple years ago for one of my college courses about how in some situations with injuries in sports, they happen in the most standard way than they do in the most obscure way. For example, a pocket passer, a quarterback that's a pocket passer, is more likely to get a season-ending injury in the pocket than a scrambling quarterback is running the football.
Unless you're Donovan McNabb in 2005 or 6 when he tore his ACL when he was running out of bounds against the Buccaneers. But no, you good point. Good point. Star Wars says sit Jalen for a game or two. Sit Jalen for a game or two. Let me read that again. Sit Jalen. Who in the hell is going to play quarter? Marcus Mariota or no? I'll tell you what. Let's go with Tanner McGee. Let's go with him. Come on,
Derek? Man. Is this Carr right here?
What are we
acting as Star Wars 99?
He was outscored by his own defense. He needs a reset. Yeah, he might need a reset, but what about the team right now? What are we going to go with here? Marcus Mariota or Tanner McGee? Come on, man. Come on. We're better than that. Put Jalen Carter in a fullback. Yeah, that might not be a bad idea. Angry Anthony says, the last 2 games, the refs are, nope. Not doing that, Anthony. We're not doing that here, man. Not while I'm the host. You guys can talk about all that when you want, but I am not talking about the refs. I can't.
Can we say that the refs weren't the reason the Eagles lost?
Of course not. It was a bad. There was a lot of picked up. I've never seen as many picked up flags in a game than I have.
Now,
for the amount of flags that were called.
Yeah.
For those in the viewing audience that may not completely understand why Matty B is not going to blame the refs, is because Matty B himself by occupation is a referee.
Not a football ref. I am a hockey ref and a baseball umpire. Yes, that is correct, Joe. I am and I think I have full transparency to everybody. So listen, from personal experience, we are part of the game. And by personal experience, I'm not the guy from what was the hey Joe Wood, you're wrestling. Who was the bad referee who turned bad and then he became a wrestler back in the 80s? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh my! I know who you're talking about. It's on the tip of my tongue. I believe he still wrestles today, or he was like the NWO's personal ref, and
Right,
Yeah.
but
they would use.
you guys know
Yeah,
who I'm talking about, right? I'm not.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
what we're doing. We're not out there doing that. We're trying to make the best calls we can. We mess up from time to time. We're only human, but we are part of the game, and we have to all live together. So that's where I stay on that. And I haven't seen the one egregious call that I did see that was missed tonight was when Jalen was sliding and he got speared. That was a miss.
Yep.
That was a late hit. That should have been called. I'll give him that. But yeah, I'm
And
not
there
one
was
to.
there was a ton of no calls in that Bills game that went for us. So
Yeah,
you
the
know,
horse collar, the 2 plays on Slay. Yeah, absolutely. The coordinators need to be put on notice. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. You guys lost to teams that were better. No need to panic. You guys think you're better than you really are.
I don't think
That
this
seems.
Eric guy's an actual Eagles fan. So maybe
Nah, I don't think he is. I don't think he plays one on TV either. You live with whatever warts Sidney Brown has. The guy at least has the ability to make plays and force turnovers. He's young, and he could. I think he's definitely going to, as Joey Mark's been saying all night. Not necessarily a bad player, just a young player, and maybe needs some time to mature. But to put him in a position like this, maybe that's not
Well,
where he needs to be.
Blankenship got hurt.
Well, yeah,
He had to come in because
yeah,
Blankenship
yeah.
got hurt.
Blankenship got hurt. That's right.
Yeah, but this goes back to Howie in the offseason and
Yeah.
forcing.
Was there not enough
forcing
depth?
guys.
Yep. Let's go back to the end of last season. We knew we were losing Edwards, Sayamalo, CJ, GJ, and Hargrave.
See, I don't
That
agree
makes
with that. I think the only name that realistically we knew for a fact we were losing was Hargrave because he was going to get an astronomical payday. But the other guys should have all been realistically opportunities to resign.
Yeah, and I know they chose two who they thought were probably the ones that they probably couldn't replace right off the bat in terms of the cornerbacks. And maybe that's what the plan was. And they said, we can live with everything else, but we really need to make sure the top of the field is taken care of. Maybe that was the plan there. But Edwards, I was always against not letting him go. I really wish they would have kept him. I really do. He was really good, and he solved our linebacker problem. And him and Kazir White, say what you want about him, they played really well together last year, and they solved the linebacker problem for at least one season. And then the safety ability of CJ, GJ also really locked down our secondary for at least 1 year.
I mean, even Epps didn't sign for a whole lot with the Raiders.
Yeah. Anthony says, or Steven says, so to be 10-3 is still good. Yeah, and we're not going to lose sight of that, I guess. Anthony says the last 2 games, they seem like they can't wait. The season's over. That's another interesting point, and I mentioned it at the top of the show, and I'm going to bring it back up now to Joe Woods. Joe Woods. You get your mouth smacked in last week on your own field, and this week you go on the road against your most hated rival, a division rival. The division is still kind of in the balance. Now it's really in the balance. The conference is still hanging out there. And we heard all week from the players and coaches, oh, wait till you see. What did A.J. Brown say? Wait till you see us. We're going to back it up. What did he say?
Yeah.
Whatever it was.
Something about like blowout or something like that. Or
we're going to back. Yeah,
yeah.
We know what happened. What do you see? What's the counter to that? Because they came out on the field, the same product, really.
I would say yes or no because they got busted in the mouth early with that opening drive. But then the Eagles came out and were moving the ball downfield, and then we had that Jalen fumble that kind of changed the whole complexion. I just think the mental lapse of this team, time and time again, and the turnovers in marquee times where, look go back to last week again. You start the game off 6-0, 14-0, might put the game out of reach. It's just there's just times where they can't finish, they can't complete, and they can't sustain it over an entire game. It's like you get a great first half or a great second half. We haven't seen a complete game once this whole season. And one thing I want to say is I'm tired of hearing, oh, well, we haven't seen them play their best game yet. How do we know that? What if what we're seeing on the field is who this team truly is? I'm tired of hearing this isn't their best game. This probably is their best that we've seen.
Yeah, but I'll agree with the whole. I think we played one complete game, and that was probably the Dolphins game way back when. That was pretty much.
But even that game, to be fair, the Dolphins were down 3 starting cornerbacks, I believe. Yeah. Xavier Howard was out, and Ramsey was out that game. I mean, 2 of their starting cornerbacks and their starting safety was out that game. They had a lot of injuries on defense. And I know you play who's in front of you, but the most complete game with half of a defense isn't anything to hang your hat on.
Steven says Blankenship is not a starter in this league, and now he's really not a player in this league because he's probably entered the protocols since was taken out of this game. Joe Marks going forward, we mentioned with Sidney Brown tonight was forced into duty. You mentioned it because of the injury to Reed Blankenship. If he is now going to miss some time, what's your take on Sidney Brown going forward as that safety?
First off, to respond to this gentleman's comment, Reed Blankenship is a good football player, and I really do think that. I did not know who he was, but for any guy to come in off of an injury last year, and in his first snap on defense, on his first snap, pick Aaron Rodgers off, that's pretty decent. So you have to understand this guy is going to grow into his position. And it goes back to what I originally said. He was pushed into that position, and when that happened with CJGJ during that Packers game last season, now he's being pushed into the starting position probably sooner than he expected, and he's hanging tough. There haven't been those outside of the Niners game. There hasn't been those explosive over-the-top receptions. So that means he's doing his job. He may not be picking the ball off as much, but really no one on this defense is. I mean, that's kind of where I want to wrap this thing back around is we had 3 turnovers against our offense, but yet we were not able to do enough damage to either replicate that by getting 3 turnovers of our own or supersede it by getting more. This team that we saw last year, this defense that we saw last year, that had a record-setting sack total and was good with their turnover differential, it just doesn't look like – because a lot of these guys, they're still there. I mean, Reed was on the team last year. Slay, Bradbury, they were on the team last year. Reddick, Graham, Sweat, they were on the team last year. So I don't want to hear that there's this complete demolishing of the defense. It's especially not in the secondary, but it just comes down to what happened to the, hungry for the ball kind of thing.
Michael says that the Eagles outside of Statland do not have any veteran coach leadership to help Sirianni. Shouldn't the head coach be the one helping the coaches? Should it not be the other way around, Michael? Shouldn't we have a head coach who is that stoic figure on the sidelines that is lending all the aid that he needs to his coaches? The coaches don't work for the head coach, or you know what I mean. Mess that up. But I disagree. I don't agree with your point because I think it's Sirianni that should be helping them, not the other way around. That's my point. Advocate says other elite teams seem to be able to scheme around the quarterback weakness. Why can't we scheme around QB1 strengths? We have. Well, absolutely. And the problem is maybe it's not the right scheme. That's my take on that.
I will go back to that coaching point for a minute and say this. When Andy Reid was here, he did have older assistant coaches like Jim Johnson, and I think Marty Mutt wasn't the first one, the first OC he had. But he had some guys that were veteran assistant coaches because he was so young and it was his first head coaching gig. Not that they were bossing Andy around, but that Andy could bounce some of his ideas, whether they were good or bad, off of these guys that could tell you that's a bad idea.
Yeah, but we're talking year 3 Sirianni, right? I mean, I know. You know what I mean? I get it, maybe year 1 or 2, but by this point, Sirianni is taking this team to a Super Bowl right now. And I get it. The coaching staff has switched out, but Sirianni's still here. So I hear your point, though.
And we're constantly hearing about the success of Jalen and Sirianni 27-3 and all that stuff. At this point, like you said, Sirianni should be elevating the coaches around him, not vice versa.
No, I definitely agree with that. I think we're getting to the end. Jeez Louise, no, we're not.
Can we skip that second comment after this guy?
What is this one? Yeah, I'm not doing that one. See, usually at this point they start getting stupid, and I got to turn them off all together. So, listen, boys, we've been going at this for an hour and 15 minutes. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. So, I'm going to go around the room, and I want to get your final thoughts, not only on just this game, but the gauntlet is now going to wrap up in Seattle next week, Monday Night Football, the second of 3 straight night games. Again, no sleep coming, but we have a potential to go 4-2 through the gauntlet, or 3-3. Our playoff destiny now is still in our own hands, but it's gotten a little bit more hairy. So I'm going to start with Joe Wood first. Your take first, overall take on this game, and then what is your overall take on the Eagles going the rest of the way?
Yeah, no, I mean, last 2 weeks have not been pretty by any means. No one's going to sugarcoat it by any means, but it's like you said, still in our hands. We have 4 winnable games to finish the season. If you would have looked at the schedule in the beginning of the season and said, okay, the Eagles at this point in the season are going to be 10-3, I think any fan would have said, okay, I'll take it. You talk Dolphins, Bills, Chiefs, Cowboys, 49ers, and you're 10-3 right now. That's still impressive, to say the least. Has it been pretty? No, but it's about getting to the playoffs with a healthy team, and then anything can happen at this point. So the season is still in front of us. At this point, hopefully Eagles wake up and come to the field, but again, the season is still in front of us. Everything is not lost.
Joey Marks, takeaway from this game and going forward.
So the takeaway from this game was, in the immortal words of Jalen Hurts, it's a deuce. You just got to flush it, and you gotta flush it by midnight. Well, we're past midnight. By 2 a.m. this morning. You have to be on that flight back to Philly and just say, yep, and now we have Seattle. So let's just move on. Like, you don't need to dwell on it. You don't need to, because everything is right there in front of you. Now, to keep in mind with the gauntlet up to this point, with the 2 Cowboys games, the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Dolphins, they're 4-2. That's not bad. And that's not bad at all. And most people, and the Niners, 5-2. I'm sorry. So that's not bad at all. I mean, look, if you would have said to me out of those teams, we would have came out 5-2, I would have taken it. But going forward, you're going to have 3 potentially teams that have nothing to fight for. The Giants and the Cardinals, they're going to have nothing to fight for. So you're going to be able to kick a dead dog, no pun intended, Peter, but you're going to be able to kick a dead dog because they got no fight left. Seattle's still fighting for something. That's the game that worries me. Going back to the West Coast, going back towards a hungry team, going back to a team that has had our number in the past, it's a challenging game, but everything is in front of us. And I'll end my point with this. Please, Eagles fans, don't think for a second that the Cowboys or the Niners, because they have to run the table too, that they're just going to cakewalk it to the rest of the season. They may not. Let's not just assume that they will. They get another loss, this whole dynamic takes on a different character.
Certainly. And my take on this game and going forward, I'll start with the game. I saw a team that, told me that they were going to come back hungrier and faster and better than they were, that they were really embarrassed about what happened in Philadelphia against the 49ers. And I saw a team that was literally sleepwalking through this entire game. I mentioned this, that Cowboys didn't blow the Eagles out. They just methodically pulled away. And the Eagles had nothing. They had no counterpunch. They had no life, just like last week in San Francisco. I think this is a symptom of a bigger problem that I think ultimately would be the demise of the Eagles this year. So my takeaway from this game is a little bit more bleak than the other two. gentlemen here. I do believe this was the season that started today. You know, there was the big reaction game. It's the game we wanted to see. What was this championship DNA? What was this winning culture going to look like? Well, we got our answer tonight, and it's not a good one, especially moving forward throughout the rest of the season. Is it lost? Absolutely not. It's not lost because now we move on to Seattle, as Joe Mark said. But I said this last week too. They shouldn't flush this. They need to keep these games with them. They need to remember these feelings. They need to go into the games every week thinking, I do not want to end up like Dallas or San Fran. We can't be that way. This team is being tested right now. The real first adversity test they've ever had under Nick Sirianni in a situation where they're considered the hunted. And right now they're failing. Right now they're failing bad. And they made things a lot more close in the NFC. A lot more close in the NFC East. Still a lot of football to go, but this is definitely not what this vaunted fan base thought it was going to be like coming off the field after beating Buffalo, and how fast things can change in the NFL.
Nothing is given to you for easy. In NFL, nothing's given to you for easy.
And with that, let's wrap things up. Joe Marks, where can the good folks out there find you?
I'm on Twitter at JoeWolf112680. I put up a bunch of different affiliate links of some of my sponsors that I promote, and I'm also on The Locker Room on Thursday nights at 6 o'clock. You can catch me, hopefully not in like a headlock by Mike Lauro, thanks to Matty B. But with Mike Lauro and my main man, James Scorza.
You tell Big Mike he knows where to find me. All right. He knows where to find me. All right. Joe, where can the good folks out there find you?
Yeah, every Friday night, 10 p.m., Edge of Philly, Steel Steps, talking all things wrestling, and also on Twitter. My handle's right there, Woods Wrestling 3. So if you're into wrestling, check us out Friday night, Steel Steps, 10 p.m.
And I'm Matty B. Check me out every Monday on the Edge of Philly Sports. We're talking Philly Sports with Matty B. I'm going to have first shot at the postmortem after, of course, we have to go through the first 24 hours of fan reaction. And then I'm also doing duty on Clear the Ice, the Flyers postgame show. And when the season seems fit, the Vikings final, the Phillies postgame show here, all here on the Edge of Philly Sports. But before we go, let's take care of one last piece of business. If you're looking to get to Seattle now, I think this trip is sold out. So I don't know if you can go on this one, but there's a lot more coming up, and maybe not for the Eagles, unless it's for the playoffs, because who knows? At this point, they might be going on the road. So keep on looking out for stuff that Philly Sports Trips has to offer, because if you want to travel like the pros, look no further than Philly Sports Trips at www.phillysportstrips.com. And gentlemen, listen, been a blast. Thank you for joining us. Thank you out there for chiming in and contributing. We'll talk again next week from Seattle. Go Birds.
Later.